Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Zarian Rahman with top stories. Orlando shooting. Obama decrees easy access to guns. US Senate rejects terrorist gun sale restrictions. Obama hosts Saudi Prince Salman at White House. US elections. Sanders to work with Clinton to beat Trump. David Cameron EU question time. PM attacks untrue leave claims. Bangladesh Abhijit Roy murder. Main suspect killed by police. US Open 2016. Dustin Johnson wins first major amid farcical finish at Oakmont. Here's now the details. US President Barack Obama has renewed his call to reduce gun violence, calling easy access to weapons unconscionable. Speaking for an early Father's Day address, Obama said gun violence was preventable and too common. It's unconscionable that we allow easy access to weapons of war in these places. The address comes less than a week after the mass shooting in Orlando, Florida, that left 49 people dead. Even after we see parents grieve for their children, the fact that we as a country do nothing to prevent the next heartbreak makes no sense, he said. Obama called on parents who are concerned for their children's safety to speak out about the dangers guns present. We need our kids to hear us speak up about the risks guns posed to our communities, and against the status quo that doesn't make sense. The need to hear us say these things even when those who disagree are loud and are powerful. Obama said being tough on terrorism, particularly the sorts of homegrown terrorism that we've seen now in Orlando and San Bernardino, means making it harder for people who want to kill Americans to get their hands on assault weapons that are capable of killing dozens of innocents as quickly as possible. 5 more mass shootings, all of which left 4 or more people dead, excluding the shooter, took place in the U.S. over the same weekend. Obama traveled to Orlando, where he met with the families of the victims and demanded that the Republican-controlled Congress pass gun control.
Not everything is in our control, but as parents, we should remember there's one responsibility that's always in our power to fulfill. Our obligation to give our children unconditional love and support, to show them the difference between right and wrong, to teach them to love, not to hate, and to appreciate our differences not as something to fear, but as a great gift to cherish. To me, fatherhood means being there. So in the days ahead, let's be there for each other. Let's be there for our families and for those that are hurting. Let's come together in our communities and as a country. And let's never forget how much good we can achieve simply by loving one another. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and have a great weekend.
4 proposals were brought before the Senate after 49 people died in an attack on a gay nightclub in Florida. But Democratic and Republican senators voted along party lines, blocking each other's bills. Senators strongly disagreed about how to prevent more attacks happening in future. Republican Senator John Cornyn said, "Our colleagues want to make this about gun control when what we should be making this about is the fight to eliminate the Islamic extremism that is the root cause for what happened in Orlando. My colleagues in many ways want to treat the symptoms without fighting the disease." For her part, Democratic Senator Barbara Mikulski said, "Why is it we would go through such incredible scrutiny to board an airplane to protect me against terrorists, and yet we have no scrutiny of the people on the terrorist watch list to be able to buy a gun?" U.S. President Barack Obama has hosted Saudi Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman at the White House, in a move aimed at thawing relations between the two countries after Washington's apparent rapprochement with its main regional rival, Iran. The 30-year-old prince, who has become the driving force behind Saudi foreign policy, discussed a host of challenges facing stability in the Middle East region after meeting Obama in the Oval Office, a rare honor for a non-head of state. The two men called for an adherence to a cessation of hostilities in Syria and a political transition to end the reign of Bashar al-Assad. They also discussed the fight against the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant Group and the conflicts in Iraq and Yemen. Briefing journalists after talks at the White House, Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubair repeated the kingdom's desire to arm Syria's moderate opposition with ground-to-air missiles and repeated an offer to deploy Saudi special forces in any U.S.-led operation. Jubair noted that from the start of the crisis, Riyadh had pushed for a more robust policy, including airstrikes, safe zones, a no-fly zone, and a no-drive zone. Obama has been reluctant to see U.S. forces drawn into another conflict in the Middle East, and many in Washington are concerned that weapons sent to the rebels fighting Assad could fall into the wrong hands. The Vermont senator told his supporters in a speech that it was vital that they stop the Republican candidate Donald Trump from winning the White House. He also promised to continue working to transform the Democratic Party. Mr. Sanders has resisted ending his campaign since Mrs. Clinton effectively sealed the nomination last week. He won 22 states' primaries and caucuses, receiving more than 12 million votes. But Mrs. Clinton won 16 million votes and enough pledged and superdelegates to pass the threshold needed for nomination at a party convention next month. The major political task that we face in the next 5 months is to make certain that Donald Trump is defeated and defeated badly, and I personally intend to begin my role in that process in a very short period of time, he said. But the senator added, defeating Mr. Trump could not be their only goal. We must continue our grassroots effort to create the America that we know we can become. I also look forward to working with Secretary Clinton to transform the Democratic Party so that it becomes a party of working people and young people. He stressed that his vision for the future was not a fringe or radical idea, but something that millions of Americans believe in and want to see happen. The PM dismissed warnings over an EU army, the prospects of Turkey joining, and the cost of the UK's membership. In a special edition of Question Time, he said the UK would be a quitter if it voted to leave. Vote Leave said the PM just doesn't have the answers and that people do not believe him anymore on the EU. The referendum on whether the UK should stay in the EU or leave takes place on Thursday. Leave campaigners say Turkey's bid for EU membership could trigger a sharp rise in migration to the UK under free movement rules. Asked at the question and answer session in Milton Keynes whether he would use the UK's veto to prevent Turkey joining, the PM said, I do not think it's going to happen for decades, so as far as I'm concerned, the question simply doesn't arrive. He said the row over Turkish membership was the biggest red herring in this whole EU referendum debate. The PM said Leave's controversial claim that £350 million a week is spent on EU membership isn't true, and that a European army, which prompted a former defense chief to switch to the Leave campaign at the weekend, was not going to happen. I am sure there are arguments for leaving, he said, but added that it would be a tragedy if the UK voted to leave on the basis of 3 things that are completely untrue. Virginia Raji from the anti-establishment 5-star movement is seen as the favorite against Roberto Giachetti of the center-left Democratic Party. Her victory would be a blow to Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi. His PD party may also lose in Italy's financial capital Milan and face tough battles in Turin and Bologna. Ms. Raji, a 37-year-old lawyer, won 35% of the vote in the first round 2 weeks ago against 24% for Mr. Giachetti. Correspondents say a victory in Rome would give anti-globalist 5-star a platform for parliamentary elections due in 2018. The next mayor of Rome will find a city mired in debts of more than 30 billion euros, twice its annual budget. Prime Minister Renzi has staked his political future on an October referendum in which he wants Italians to back far-reaching constitutional reforms. The plan is to end Italy's tradition of revolving door governments and inject stability after years of party infighting and legislative logjams. Mr. Alves resigned on Thursday after being linked to a corruption scheme. Brazil's Attorney General Rodrigo Janot presented evidence to the Supreme Court saying that Mr. Alves had a secret bank account in Switzerland. He became the 3rd cabinet minister to stand down since interim President Michel Temer came to power last month. All are implicated in a major corruption scandal at the state-owned company Petrobras. Mr. Alves denied the allegations. The Supreme Court released testimony by an ex-executive implicating 20 politicians including Mr. Temer. In a television broadcast, Mr. Temer dismissed the testimony as frivolous lies. The allegations come from Sergio Machado, the former chief executive of Petrobras subsidiary Transpetro. Mr. Temer took office on 12 May after the Senate voted to begin an impeachment trial against President Dilma Rousseff for breaking the law in the management of last year's budget. Mr. Temer took office on 12 May after the Senate voted to begin an impeachment trial against President Dilma Rousseff for breaking the law in the management of last year's budget. She said the accusations are politically motivated and described the impeachment proceedings against her as a coup. Mexico voice singer Alejandro Fuentes shot in Chicago. IS conflict, Fallujah humanitarian disaster warning. Protesters gather for anti-US military rally in Okinawa. China rules against Apple over iPhone patent claim. Andy Murray beats Milos Raonic to win record 5th Queen's title. Let's move on to the next news. Alejandro Fuentes, 45, died on Saturday in hospital after an ambush on Thursday night. He was a Voice contestant in 2011. His death comes 2 days after singer Christina Grimmie, who appeared on the US edition of The Voice, was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida. The number of murders in Chicago this year is up 72% from 2015. Mr. Fuentes had been celebrating his birthday with friends on Thursday night, the local medical examiner's officer said. He was in his car on the street outside Tras Bambalinas, a performing arts studio he ran for young people in southwest Chicago. A gunman ordered him out of the car. When he refused, the gunman shot him 3 times in the head. Ms. Grimmie, 22, was shot by a fan in Orlando as she was signing autographs after a concert. Her attacker then killed himself. Some 80,000 people have fled during a 4-week government offensive to drive back so-called Islamic State fighters, says the UN. A further 25,000 civilians are likely on the move, the organization adds. Aid workers are struggling to provide food, water, and medicine to people who are sleeping in the open in hopelessly overcrowded camps outside the city. The overwhelming number of people that have come out of Fallujah has actually overwhelmed our ability to respond to the people in need, said Nasser Muflahi from the Norwegian Refugee Council. We implore the Iraqi government to take charge of this humanitarian disaster unfolding on our watch, he added. Iraqi government forces have succeeded in retaking most of Fallujah, but fighting continues in some parts of the city, which is just 50 kilometers west of Baghdad. We drove into Fallujah on a road that snaked through what was once a wealthy suburb but is now deserted. Many homes have been destroyed. By the side of the road, unexploded shells showed how dangerous these streets remain for civilians if they are allowed to return. Many tell harrowing escape stories. Some have been caught in crossfire, others drowned in the Euphrates as they tried to swim to safety. We heard the sound of artillery and gunfire wherever we went. The protesters are angry after a former U.S. Marine employed as a civilian worker was arrested over the rape and murder of a local 20-year-old woman. The case has intensified long-standing opposition to the military bases, spurring calls for U.S. military personnel to be moved off the island. There are 26,000 U.S. troops on Okinawa. They work and live on bases that cover a fifth of the island and are a key part of the U.S.-Japan security alliance. The demonstration on Sunday began with a moment of silence for Rima Shimabukuro, the murder victim, and a message from her father. "Why my daughter? Why was she killed?" said the message read on his behalf. "My thoughts are the same as those of all the bereaved families that have met with suffering up to now." Protesters waved placards reading, "Our anger is past its limit," and "Pull out the Marines," Chihiro Uchimura, 71, told, "I'm filled with sadness and I really don't want any more victims. As long as there are US military bases, this kind of incident will continue to happen," she said. A simultaneous demonstration was held outside the Japanese parliament in Tokyo. A 32-year-old US civilian working at the base was arrested last month in connection with the murder of Ms. Shimabukuro. The demonstrators called for the scrapping of plans by Washington and Tokyo to move a major US marine facility in the center of the island to a more remote area. Okinawa's government, Takeshi Onaga, who attended the rally, is opposed to the plan and wants the base removed entirely. The decision to move the facility was sparked by the rape of a 12-year-old Japanese girl by 3 US servicemen in 1995. But the plan has been delayed by local opposition and legal maneuvering. Okinawa was under US occupation for 27 years following World War II. They say the man named as Sharif died in a gun battle with the police near the capital Dhaka city early on Sunday. Police had been seeking information about Sharif and 6 other militants suspected in the case. Abhijit Roy, an American Bangladeshi blogger and writer, was hacked to death by several men as he returned from Dhaka Book Fair in February last year. He is one of the several secularist figures killed by suspected Islamists in recent years in Bangladesh, in attacks that have received widespread international condemnation. In many cases, the Islamic State group or Al-Qaeda say they carried out the attacks, but the government has blamed local militants. Roy, 42, founded the Mukta Mona blog in 2000 to champion secular and humanist writing in Muslim-majority Bangladesh. He had received death threats from Islamist radicals for his writings before his murder, family said. In the latest such attack, a Hindu college teacher was critically injured by men armed with knives at his home in the city of Manipur on Wednesday. A suspect in that case, Ghulam Faizullah Fahim, was shot dead in the southern district of Madaripur on Saturday. He was in police custody when officers took him to help capture his associates, but died in the ensuing exchange of fire with the militants, officials say. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has said her government will do whatever it takes to stop such attacks. Police have arrested thousands of people across the country over the past weeks. Here's now the Millennium Information and Technology News. The iPhone 6 and 6s models are similar to Shenzhen's Bailei's little-known 100C phone, the authority ruled. In theory, this could lead to iPhone sales being halted in Beijing, but sales continue as Apple has appealed to a higher court. The tech giant said the handset is still available throughout China. iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus, as well as iPhone 6s, iPhone 6s Plus and iPhone SE models are all available for sale today in China. We appealed an administrative order from a regional patent tribunal in Beijing last month, and as a result, the order has been stayed pending review by the Beijing IP Court, the firm said. Analyst Ben Wood from CCS Insight told he was confident that Apple would resolve the situation. Large companies will always be reluctant to settle if they feel they don't have a case to answer, but the Chinese market is so strategic to Apple that if they have to settle, they will. This is a constant challenge for all large tech firms. Typically, these sorts of legal spats are a game of brinkmanship. Based in Zurich, the team will focus on 3 areas: machine learning, natural language understanding, and computer perception. Emmanuel Mogenet, who will head the unit, said much of the research would be on teaching machines common sense. There was, he said, no limit on how big I grow the team. We are very ambitious in terms of growth. The only limiting factor will be talent, he told journalists gathered in Zurich to hear more about Google's AI plans. Machine learning is already the secret sauce in a lot of Google products, said Mr. Mogenet, including search, spam filters, translation, and content removal, as well as newer products such as its virtual helper, Google Assistant, messaging app Allo, and self-driving cars. We are on the brink of a brand new era of computing, Mr. Mogenet told journalists. One of the key focuses would be on teaching computers common sense, he said. A 4-year-old child learns about the world through their senses, so they know that cows don't fly without being told this. Computers need to understand some obvious things about the world, so we want to build a common sense database. Another key focus will be improving human-machine dialogue. Google has always been in the business of natural language because that is how people search, but we have never really understood the question. We have just matched keywords with content and ranked that content smartly, he said. The next stage is to truly understand what people are asking. Finally, the researchers would delve beneath the bonnet to try understand how machines learn and why deep learning works so well, he said. Here's now the Millennium Entertainment and Arts News. It struck him after rolling backwards down the steep drive at his Studio City home, pinning him against a brick postbox pillar and a security fence. Yelchin, 27, also appeared in such films as Like Crazy 2011 and Green Room 2015. Yelchin played Pavel Chekhov, the role originally made famous by Walter Koenig, now 79, in the films Star Trek 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness 2013. A third film with him in the role, Star Trek Beyond, is due for release next month. News of his death led Twitter trends in Los Angeles and beyond on Sunday. Zachary Quinto, who plays Spock in the series, wrote on Instagram, "Our dear friend, our comrade, our Anton, one of the most open and intellectually curious people I have ever had the pleasure to know. So enormously talented and generous of heart, wise beyond his years, and gone before his time. All love and strength to his family at this impossible time of grief." The singer's comeback album, 50, beat new releases by Tom Odell and Paul McCartney to reach number 1. "It is amazing, it is incredible," said Ashley. "It's been a very long time." The star first found fame in the 1980s as part of the Stock Aitken Waterman hit factory, but his new material presents a more mature, soulful sound. He was engaged in a battle for the number 1 slot over the last week, changing places with Tom Odell on several occasions. In the end, he outsold the Chichester-born singer by just 3,700 copies. According to the official chart company, Ashley sold more physical CDs, while Odell secured more digital sales and streams. "I like Tom Odell," Ashley said. I bought his last album and I'm going to buy this one as well, but I have held off from buying it this week. Viewers, now the Millennium Business News. Vincent Derivas says remaining would benefit the UK economy, but that Brexit could mean Brexit for the EU. EDF Energy employs more than 13,500 people across the UK. Vote Leave said it was entirely unsurprising because EDF was owned by the French government, whose policy is for the UK to remain in the EU. The letter comes days before the referendum vote on 23rd June. EDF Energy is one of the UK's biggest energy firms, supplying about 5 million residential and business accounts with electricity or gas. It produces about 1/5 of the nation's electricity and is proposing to build the UK's new Hinkley Point C number power station. This country has embraced globalization as an opportunity despite the risks. As a result, Britain is a modern country with a strong economy, the 5th largest in the world, one of the strongest economies in the largest single market in the world. He had been expected to stay on in the role but will return to academia. Mr. Rajan had been open to continuing after his initial 3-year term, but has made his move after due reflection and consultation with the government. The former IMF economist, who was one of the few predict the 2008 financial crisis, has been praised for his handling of the Indian economy. It is now the fastest growing major economy in the world. However, he has faced pressure from a faction within Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling party for keeping interest rates high. There has also been criticism that he had begun to stray into politics. The controversy revolved around whether Johnson should have been penalized when his ball moved on the 5th green. After speaking with Johnson on the 12th tee, officials informed other players a decision would be made post-round. A penalty stroke was added to Johnson's score, but he won by 3 from Lowry, who had 3 bogeys from the 14th. American Jim Furyk shot a 4 under 66 to finish tied for second with the compatriots Scott Piercy 69 and Lowry. England's Lee Westwood, playing alongside Johnson, started the day on 2 under par but had a 10 over 80 to finish an 8 over. The United States Golf Association later said they wanted Johnson to know of the potential one-shot penalty so he could play accordingly. Raonic led by a set and 3-0 before Murray became the first player this week to break the Canadian serve, doing so twice in succession. The top seed and defending champion went on to win 6-7, 5-7, 6-4 and 6-3. The Scot overtakes the likes of John McEnroe, Boris Becker and Roy Emerson with 5 Asian Championships titles. McEnroe was courtside for the final in his role as coach to Raonic, with the American's old adversary Ivan Lendl in the opposite corner after rejoining the Murray camp this week. It was nice of him to stick around for the presentation. Murray joked after seeing that Lendl had quickly left the court. It was obviously a good first week back together. Viewers, let's have a look at Millennium TV News Recap. Orlando shooting. Obama decrees easy access to guns. US Senate rejects terrorist gun sale restrictions. Obama hosts Saudi Prince Salman at White House. US elections. Sanders to work with Clinton to beat Trump. David Cameron EU question time. PM attacks untrue leave claims. Bangladesh Abhijit Roy murder. Main suspect killed by police. US Open 2016. Dustin Johnson wins first major amid farcical finish at Oakmont. You're up to date with the top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log in www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you and stay with Millennium TV. Allah Hafiz.